What's up, guys? My name is Jafar Al-Kanani. I'm an anatomy teaching assistant. I'm a doctor of physical therapy and athletic trainer. And today I'm going to give you some tips and tricks that I often give people who are struggling in anatomy or want to get a higher grade. All of this comes with a gigantic grain of salt, though, because these are the things that worked for me. And I have seen people succeed without following any of these pieces of advice. So if you're already successful, you're doing good, you probably don't even need this video. But if you want to hear my approach or the things that worked for me, this is a great start. And if you are struggling, this is also hopefully can give you a little bit of a boost or maybe some ideas of ways that you can change things around to help yourself out. All right, so the first tip is to utilize open lab. Open lab is when your professors, your teaching assistants are there and you can just go around and ask questions. And if you show up to open lab, you'll be able to learn a lot better and a lot more. You'll have your other classmates there. And oftentimes this is like the first step to doing better in anatomy. So thank you very much. You passed because of me. Okay, but in all seriousness, there's a bunch of other stuff you can do. And the first thing is to show up to open lab or lab on your own or whatever with a plan. Don't just walk in there aimlessly. It's kind of hilarious being a teacher assistant. And you see that student that's kind of struggling. You're like, hey, what are you working on right now? And they're like legit staring at the wall. They're like looking around. It's like, they're like, I don't know. Like, just listening to stuff. And you're like, oh my goodness, go in with a plan. Think about what you need to study before you go in. Be prepared, at least to some extent. At least like, oh, I'm going to go over the stuff from last time and have the list from last time. That's like bare minimum. Have a plan. All right, so next up, when you're in lab, don't just be in there by yourself. I mean, you can be in there by yourself every once in a while, but I really think it's nice to have a study buddy or maybe a small group. The problem with groups is the bigger the group is, the more chaotic it is. It just gets insane. There's like 5 people standing around a body and they are all arguing about some minuscule thing that doesn't even matter at all. And you're sitting there wanting to pull your hair out because you just want to move on to the next thing. And then you ask a question and it gets drawn out by this other guy talking about his dog. It's just like, it sucks. For me, find that one person that has a similar style of learning to you and work with them. Doesn't even necessarily need to be your friend. It could just be a classmate that you have a similar study style, and then work with that person. And you can have your stuff you want to go over, they have their stuff you want to go over. You work together, you teach each other, you quiz each other. It's awesome. Do that and it'll really help. All right, so the next thing is textbooks in lab. So from my experience, most people don't like to bring textbooks into lab. It's like a hygiene thing. They don't like to bring any study materials in. And I think that this is something that you should at least consider or reconsider. Having the textbook with you while you're learning is so helpful. It's literally a sheet that tells you everything that you need to know. And if you don't have that with you, you're reliant on other people's information, there's a lot more stuff that can go wrong, and you have easy access to information that really helps you learn if you have it in with you. Now, the way to do this in the most hygiene way, there's multiple ways, but you could get like the plastic sleeves. You could have some materials that you dedicate to going into lab and others that will never go in. You could write stuff or print stuff separately. You could have a space with a bunch of paper towels down and the book never leaves that space. It could be like on a counter far away, and you could tell people, hey, you can use this, just don't touch it with gloves, something like that. I think there's ways to do it in a hygiene way, and I think it'll really help you if you can make that happen. So this is at least worth considering. So this kind of connects to the next point, which is when you're doing the dissection, if you're just standing there, like vegetating, that's probably not a good use of your time. So just by the way cadaver anatomy works, you can't have 5 people doing dissection on the body at the same time. It's just not possible. So some people in that group are not going to be doing anything. And that's like, at least with dissection, that's okay. But don't just stand there. Get those study materials, go over stuff, have a role, be engaged. And this is also going to help the people dissecting. You can say, hey, this is what it looks like in the textbook. Or, oh, I think that's that muscle. The origin of that muscle is this, or the insertion is that. And then that way you're not just dissecting, you're going over stuff, you're learning. Use that lab time to the maximum potential. And another way that you can use your lab time to its maximum potential is don't be in such a rush to leave. It's like, as soon as one person leaves from cadaver dissection, it's like everybody's got to leave. It's like a rush. But you're shorting yourself if you do that. Yeah, get through your dissection. That's important. But the most important thing is learning. Once your dissection is done and other people's dissections are done, go around to the other bodies and other groups. Ask questions. get tours. What does this structure look like on your body? Make sure that you leave confident so that you go home and you're like, I learned a lot today, so that you're not getting more and more behind every single time you're in lab. I think it's really important to give yourself that opportunity to feel like ready to learn at the end of lab by taking breaks. For some reason, people just are so anti-break taking. Take breaks. If you need to go eat food, go eat food. Your group will understand. It's a 4-hour long lab. It's insane to think that you're never going to step out and do something else, to refresh yourself. So stay till the end, use your time effectively, take breaks, don't just stand there. All of those things are going to help. All right, so the next thing involves memorization and how to memorize stuff. So shockingly, some people come into anatomy, their first day, and they've never had to study before. And it's amazing. I don't know how these people, went to college, but whatever. So if you've never had to study before, or maybe you've never had to study this much before, finding new ways to study and memorize is really important. And for me, that meant flashcards. So I would make tons and tons and tons of flashcards. I would go over small bits of them, build it up slowly. I would take ones out that I knew. I would, repeat the same ones if I couldn't get it. Flashcards all day, every day. Everyone has a different system though. Some people like to write stuff down. Some people have like long pages on their iPads. It just depends. It's whatever works for you. Now, that being said, there are some other ways that you can study that really help you out. So there's that baseline memorization level, but there's also a more advanced level, which is when you're starting to connect information to other bits of information. So for instance, what are all the muscles innervated by a certain nerve? Or what are all the muscles that attach onto a certain bone? Or mark a certain part of bone, what are the muscles that attach here? Or what are the nerves of the muscle that attaches here? Stuff like that. Connect information together, group it, and that's another way to synthesize it and make your recollection and your understanding just a little bit better and more prepared. All right, so I hope you guys found these tips helpful. Everyone is different. Not everybody needs to do all of these different things. But if you are struggling and you want to try something out and, maybe you need some advice, try some of these things out. Try and use them to your advantage. And hopefully, I hope it helps.